Okay, tempera painting, obviously egg tempera painting, all paintings are tempera. It depends what you add to your paint to make it dry and fix. The most traditional is egg tempera, a very, very ancient technique that was first written down in a medieval Italian craftsman's handbook by Giannino Giannini in about 1400, and he describes this technique for making the medium for painting on panel, which is what the usual support for tempera is. So you simply start, first of all, by cracking an egg. It couldn't be any simpler. So you just crack an egg, and you don't actually want all of the egg, you only want the egg yolk. So what you do is you allow the white to run out between your fingers. You pick all of the bits off the egg sac, and if it's a good egg, you can handle it quite roughly. That means the protein hasn't started to break down yet, so the egg sac is actually quite robust. And what you do then, you don't need all of that either. All you actually need is the contents of the yolk sac. So you just nick the yolk sac and let it run into a straight-sided vessel, like so. So really simple. You just separate the white from the yolk sac, and then the contents of the yolk sac from the yolk sac itself. And then you add by eye. It's not science. We're not talking very, very exact measurement, but approximately the same volume of white wine by eye. And then you simply stir that. And that's what icon painters and tempera painters refer to simply as their egg stock. And this is the binding medium. This is quite thick though. This is still got quite a high volume of the egg protein in it, which will mean if you mix your pigments with that, when it dries it will actually go glossy and crack. So normally you have to dilute even further. But that's your basic egg mix. And what most tempera painters and iconographers do is they keep their egg stock in one of these bottles with a nozzle, so that you don't get tempted to dip a dirty brush into it, which is what artists always do. They dip their brushes into anything available, including their tea or coffee. So it's just one way of keeping your egg stock clean. Keep it in one of these little nozzle bottles. You can get like salad dressing bottles from cook shops or supermarkets. You take a palette, normally a ceramic palette if you're working in the studio, because they're heavier. They tend not to knock over when you're working. But these are the little plastic palettes that I use when I'm travelling, when I'm teaching on them on the hoof. You also, for traditional tempera painting, whether it's icon painting or any other sort of tempera painting, you need two sources of distilled or bottled water. One you keep with a pipette in it, and that's for diluting. And this one you just keep for cleaning your brushes in. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a traditional earth pigment. It's a dark golden ochre called Havana ochre, and we're going to put about a butterbean sized amount into your central well, and then you simply add the same amount of egg stock by eye, just roughly by volume. Again, it doesn't have to be measured. All icon painters and tempera painters keep old brushes that they don't paint with anymore, sometimes with a stiffer bristle than the sables or squirrels that you would normally use for painting with. And then they just mix their pigment with their egg stock into a paste like so, and that's egg tempera. That's all there is to it. But again, that's probably too thick, too viscous. So what you do with your pipette is you dilute it. So you have a source of water that you don't taint and one that you wash your brush in. So you always keep the two separate. So that is sort of paintable viscosity. That's the sort of dilution that you want for painting. Most tempera painting is done on a gessoed ground. This is a very traditional Serbian icon painter's panel. This is a lime wood panel cradled with strips of oak to stop it warping. The surface has been primed with about 30 coats of something called gesso. It's a mixture of chalk and animal glue, basically, either rabbit skin or gelatine. And then that itself is sanded and buffed to an absolute glass finish. Because a lot of these paintings are gilded, and you need a perfect surface for perfect gilding. When I'm teaching my students normally, what we do when we're practicing tempera painting is we use thick mounting card, like this, sort of frame maker's card. And we use squirrel brushes normally. And what you do when you're putting the first layers of tempera down, you apply it quite wet. The idea is that you build the layers gradually to an intense, dark, but translucent finish. It seems contradictory and paradoxical, but what you actually want is a layer which is dark but transparent. Because that way, as you can see, there is a black brush tempera drawing, which would be on the gesso, and if you apply your pigments correctly, like so, floated, diluted, you never lose your drawing. And that you would build over several layers, maybe 5 or 6 layers, applied in that very wet fashion, one after the other. So you build the intensity of the colour, but you never lose the light from the panel, and you never lose the black line drawing. This is a very ancient technique. It was perfected by Cretan iconographers in the 15th and 16th century, and the technique is called proplasmos in Greek, which means first skin. Okay. Leave that to dry now before we can do another